All right, boom. We are live. The Trucking Truth, this person named the Trucking Truth. He has been patiently waiting. I'm going to put his comments up right now, Rick Mast. The
Okay.
Trucking Truth. He says he's all by myself. He was waiting. He was patiently waiting for us to start the Rick Mast Show, and now we have. That's the great Rick Mast. I'm Charlie Marlow, and Rick, do we have a lot to talk about this morning, buddy?
Yes, we do, baby. And hello, Trucking Truth. Now you're not by yourself any longer, dude. Welcome aboard.
Yeah, we got the Trucking Truth. We got Boo Ba. He or she, waiting to break it all down. So let's get right to it. At the end, we'll do the pleasantries, and I'll ask about your weekend. But Rick, there's too much NASCAR to talk about. Let's just start like this. I'm just going to ask you a basic question.
Yeah.
Did NASCAR get it right with their call, with their ruling that Christopher Bell rode the wall, and thus William Byron is in and Christopher Bell is out?
The short answer is yeah. The long answer is well. Let's explain why it's yeah, dude. The rule is the rule. Okay. The 20 car when he got into the wall. I mean, I understand that he ran in there and he got by 43, got in the wall. Dude, we all knew what the 43 car was doing, right? We all know what the 1 and the 3 car was doing. It's called, manipulated or whatever you want to call it. But anyhow, when Bell got into the wall, man, and you could see it from the in-car camera, dude, if he just eased up a little bit, pulled it off the wall, got back in it wide open, all he had to worry about was a 43 passing him. The 43 was not going to pass him, right? The 43 had already had a tire going down and let him go by. So, once he got into the wall, if he just turned to the left and got off of it, man, and got back in the gas, it wouldn't have happened. But NASCAR paints themselves into a corner, dude, with these rules, right? And when you have a rule, you've got to stick to it. I mean, damn, he it's like, dude, get off the wall. That's not going to work for you. We all know it's a rule now, right? And nobody's tested that. Nobody's tested that rule since they put it in. So, they I think Kyle Petty said it right last night. Listen, they did what the rule says, forget about it going to Phoenix. But we're not going to forget about it. No. The fans are not letting us forget about it. I kept up with that. Man, between the presidential election and NASCAR last night, this morning, my eyes are just buzzing. They're just buzzing reading all this stuff. So, yeah, to answer your question, overall, generally, yeah, they got it right, Charlie.
I think what's interesting, and I went and watched Elton Sawyer's press conference last night. It was about 12 minutes or so where he explained everything. And clearly, it seemed like NASCAR only ruled on the safety issue, they called it, the wall ride, in terms of Christopher Bell. And I think it took 27 minutes from the end of the race for NASCAR's ruling to be announced, whether it was on Twitter or the NBC broadcast. But after watching Elton Sawyer, it seems like they didn't take into account at all any of the race manipulation, any of the team play. So we could still have some penalties coming out maybe on Wednesday for some of these cars that were setting up the blockade for each other. But that's what I find interesting too, because as I'm waiting, I'm thinking, well, okay, clearly it was some semblance of a wall ride, right? How are they going to basically take that into account? But also, there was team play on both sides. Are they going to take all these things into account? It sounds like they just ruled on the wall ride.
Dude, when I was sitting there and it was taking so long, to me, the wall ride was like pretty simple. It was a pretty cut and dry yes or no answer. I thought, when I saw it, I'm like, dude, he rode the wall. Now I didn't know, the thing of it is, I didn't know the wording of the rule. I didn't know if they said you can't gain positions by riding the wall. It's kind of like going below the yellow line at Talladega and Daytona to gain a position. You go below the yellow line, but you can't gain a position, right? As long as you come back up. I didn't know how that rule read as far as getting into the wall. Evidently, it reads you can't get in the wall and just keep on going, right? Whether you pass somebody or not. So I'm sitting there waiting patiently like everybody. And I'm like, they must be reviewing the 1 and 3 car deal, right? They must be reviewing that. But then I'm thinking, Well, they can review that, but that will have no bearing on the 24. The 24 did nothing wrong, right? He was the one in front of these two guys. They were doing their shenanigans in behind the 24, keep that all bound up, mixed up. So, it was very confusing to me why it took so long to come up with that rule. But in NASCAR's defense, this is a big time match ruling. I mean, that's a big ruling, dude. You put a team in the championship deal, and you take one out, no matter what their rule, whichever way they rule it, somebody's going in and somebody's going out. So I understand probably that's the reason they were maybe they went back and read the rule 2 or 3 times. I don't know, right? Do we know how that rule reads, Charlie? Because I don't know. And here I am, a professional trying to teach the racing fans and world how this goes, and I do not know how that rule reads. I made a mistake. I should have did my homework last night. I'm not Larry McReynolds.
Hey, I'm not either. I'll tell you what. Next time I ask you a question, make sure you talk for about 2 to 3 minutes, and I will look up the rule as you're talking there.
Okay.
So I think what's fascinating about it with the C Bell deal, clearly it was a wall ride, but it was not the same as the Hail Melon with Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain, in his brain, said, I used to do this on the video games. Carl Edwards tried this a bunch of years ago. I'm going to do this because I have to do this to advance to Phoenix. And he did it 2 years ago. C-Bell was different because it was a racing move, right? He goes to pass Bubba. He gets loose. He hits the wall. He's on the wall for a while, but I think everybody can agree then he hung on the wall longer than he needed to, right? If he'd kind of skated off the wall a little bit, I think it's all good. So to me, it's not exactly the same as Ross Chastain, but I think he hung on the wall just long enough to look pretty clearly guilty.
Yeah, he did. And that goes back to my original statement, Charlie. All the dude had to do, turn it left, get off the wall, and get back start finish line. That's all a dude had to do. And I know he knows that now at this point, but he got in there and he knew he passed a car. He had to keep cars behind him, right? So in the moment, he's into the wall. Well, hell, I just keep it wide open now. So that way nobody can get by me before we get back to the checkered flag. But, I'm sitting there as a fan watching, knowing what the rule is now. I'm like, dude, you just cost yourself. You just cost yourself a shot at the championship. And I mean, I know that's kind of hard and tough, and again, NASCAR, they make these rules and they plant themselves in a place where, man, it's going to be damned if you do and damned if you don't. And that's, it was just, man, what a unique circumstance yesterday. And and they talk about, well, I'll let you go ahead and with your questions and stuff.
No, you can go ahead, but I have the actual language from NASCAR.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
So this is from motorsport.com. It's an article written January 31st, 2023. So here it is. I will read. It says NASCAR issued the following update to teams this week regarding the Chastain move. Quote, NASCAR will deem any future use of that maneuver as unsafe per section 10.5.2.6.a of the NASCAR rulebook to ensure that our competitors do not employ strategies that may compromise the safety of themselves, other competitors, or fans. NASCAR will issue a time penalty to any vehicle that attempts an unsafe maneuver, such as the one performed at Martinsville. It says, this is not a new rule. The safety language has existed in the rulebook, and following Martinsville, we evaluated it and chose to officiate consistently for the final race of 2022. Since the end of the season, we have worked with the drivers and teams to discuss the best way to officiate/interpret the rule for 2023, and we believe this is the right interpretation for the safety of our competitors moving forward. Now, I could go back and actually read also, Rick, section 10.5.2.6.a, but I think everybody got the drill there. You can't do the wall ride.
You just can't do the wall. It doesn't.
Can't do it.
So there's no language about advancing or not advancing your position. Okay, that was my big question. Because if you advance a position, then like the yellow line rule, then it shouldn't come into effect. But it's solely based on safety and getting in the wall and doing that. And they're very specific. You can't do that. So, it's controversial, Charlie, but there it is. There's the rule. I mean, And I'll bash NASCAR just like the rest of them when they're wrong, but on this one, the rule states that. And I was so sure of it that when I was watching the race, during the race, I'm thinking, dude, get off the wall, get off the wall. Then it was over. I'm like, dude, you just cost yourself, right? You just did it. You just knocked yourself out of the championship deal by doing that. And that's just the way it is. Now you change the rule, but
okay, so I have the rule. So basically, it's kind of a different interpretation of the actual rule. This isn't too long though, but I think it's interesting. So the wording of 10.5.2.6.a is as follows, quote, safety is a top priority for NASCAR and NEM, NASCAR Event Management. Therefore, any violations deemed to compromise the safety of an event or otherwise pose a dangerous risk to the safety of competitors, officials, spectators, or others are treated with the highest degree of seriousness. Safety violations will be handled on a case-by-case basis. So at the end there, the old case-by-case basis. Now, look, I in my opinion, fairly criticized NASCAR when they deserve it also. I think they ruled correctly on the wall ride, but that's all they ruled on.
Yeah.
Right. And there was a lot of other hijinks going on. And how about this? You can make the case that the only reason Seabell rode the wall is because the Chevys were blocking, right? And so Seabell had to pull that move out because if Austin Dillon and if who else was it? Ross Chastain and hell, maybe even Brad Keselowski ends up passing William Byron. Well, then Seabell doesn't have to make that move. So I agree with NASCAR's interpretation of the wall ride, but there was a whole hell of a lot more going on.
Yeah, and we go back to manipulation, right? And I think back so much to that Richmond race when they come out the manipulation rule. I didn't understand the manipulation rule. Okay, when they came out with it, we've had it for some number of years now. But what does it mean to manipulate the race? Well, hell, you're always manipulating the race. I'm not sure how well they can do that. And what all that. Listen, dude. I've been confused about the manipulation rule ever since NASCAR instituted it. Now I know they did it after the Michael Waltrip fiasco at Richmond years ago, and it's always been in play. But you go to any race, especially Talladega or Daytona, the manufacturers are working together all the time, right? They'll work together to keep another competitor from doing because he's at a different deal. I mean, I remember somebody pushing a guy at Talladega years ago, the last lap when his fellow competitor had run out of gas, and he had his teammate bumping him a few times the last lap or two to get him across the start-finish line. And that was before the manipulation rule. I'm pretty sure that would have fallen into the manipulation rule, right? And then Darrell would be happy, and me and Harry would not be happy. But anyhow, and it was obvious, Charlie. It was obvious to me, anyhow, what the 1 and the 3 were doing. Okay, and the poor 6 car, he was hung up right in behind him. 24 couldn't get out of his own way, but those guys that got side by side. I mean, there's some people saying, Earnhardt did it the last lap at Talladega, right? When we lost Dale, whether he was or not, hell, I don't know. I couldn't figure that one out, to be honest with you. I don't think he really was at that point when the wreck happened with Dale. But before that, maybe a little bit of it. But golly, man, it was obvious what was going on. But here's the deal, Charlie. So what? If they were doing that, if the 1 and the 3 were purposely riding side by side and not going to pass the 24, all right, then who do you penalize? You can't penalize the 24. He's not doing anything wrong. He's sitting there running his deal. Guys are behind him. He has no control over what those guys behind him are doing. So he's doing his deal. If you're going to penalize, you're going to have to penalize the 3 and the 1, but then that's going to go into the language of the manipulation rule, right? And I'm not sure what everybody's pissed off about here about that thing. It's very exciting. It was excited at the end. The one thing I didn't like was some of the stuff afterwards, and then one of the TV commentators said this is stupid and what a shame and all that. But it's part of our sport right now, I think.
Okay, I'm gonna look up the race manipulation rule also
Okay. All right.
as I ask you this question, because you brought up the Michael Waltrip situation. This is something that I didn't really remember. So I see people on X/Twitter saying, "Look, Michael Waltrip got all these penalties, and essentially his company was ruined for less than what happened last night." This was somebody else's opinion on X. So I'm asking you, first of all, explain to myself and all the people watching. We have 331 people watching right now. Thank you. Please like and subscribe also. But explain the Michael Waltrip controversy. And do you think, was that similar to last night? Was it worse? Was it not the same? What do you think?
They needed a call. The team needed a caution. Gosh, I can't even remember who the driver was,
Was it
dude.
Clint Boyer
I believe it was Clint. Yeah,
and
and
Brian Vickers, maybe?
yeah, and well, not Vic, Martin Truex, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyhow, team orders come down for the driver to spin the car out, right? So I guess he spun the car out to bring out a caution on purpose, and they had it recorded. And NASCAR heard the spotter telling the guy basically he had to spin the car out they need to bring a caution out. So the driver spun the car out, right? Brought a caution out, and then that put their teammate in the chase or in the points deal, right? But when NASCAR was done with them, man, it was such a bad deal, and MWR they already had a bad mark on them because of the very first race out when they started that deal. They got caught at Daytona with nitrous, in qualifying and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So that it was a cloud hanging over Michael's deal for a good while. And then when that happened, that particular race, man, that ended it. I mean, I think Napa was embarrassed. The sponsor was embarrassed, and I'm saying it ended their team not because NASCAR shut them down, but because the sponsors got embarrassed and said,
Mm-hmm.
we ain't going to be a part of this. So they lost the sponsor, and the team had to shut down. It was that simple, and from that became the manipulation rule. Yeah.
Okay. And I've been Googling and I still haven't found it. So I will continue. I'll tell you what, somebody in the chat, see if you can find the language for the race manipulation, because I want to read that as well.
Okay.
So much to talk about. I think the fact that you had 27 minutes to process all this, and I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but you do have, look, if Seabell gets in, then you only have 2 Toyotas and you have 2 Penske Fords getting in, right?
Right. Right.
No Chevys. In
Right.
a perfect world, NASCAR would like for all the manufacturers to be in. You also have a driver from Hendrick Motorsports right there. There's people always talking about, oh, Hendrick Motorsports, they're in bed with NASCAR and all that. And oh, by the way, I know there was a penalty, but Hendrick already got screwed a couple weeks ago with Alex Bowman. I'm not saying they shouldn't have been, but there was so many little angles to think about as we're waiting to see when this ruling dropped. But again, they didn't look, from what I interpreted from Elton Sawyer, they didn't look at the team play. And so I think there's going to be penalties off the team play, but it's not going to be any type of penalties that's going to knock drivers out of the championship. I'm sure there'll be fines and all that. Don't you think, Rick, they have to fine these guys a lot? Like, to get rid of this, to really get rid of the team play, the egregious manipulation, there has to be really severe penalties, I think.
Yeah, it would be, and I don't know. Yeah, but Charlie, then it clouds everything. All right, I get it at Martinsville what was going on, but then at other racetracks, the guys are always helping during the race. Now, when it comes
Right.
down to the end, it kind of goes away. But during the race, the guys are always helping teammates and/or manufacturers, the OEM manufacturer partners. They're always doing it, and it's more. It goes on every week. It's just more pronounced at Daytona and Talladega. It's right there in front of you, man, and you can see how it really plays out big time. So, I'm not sure where NASCAR says or how they, because right now in our sport, everything has to be so black and white, right? And if it's not black and white, we get criticized, or NASCAR gets criticized for it. So I'm not sure where you draw that line as far as you can't do this, or we're going to fine you 50 grand, or we're going to take 50 points away from you, or we're going to suspend you for a race. I don't know, man, where they come up with that. And to address the other part, Charlie, about you talking about the fans talking about doing this to get a Chevrolet in. Dude, I'm telling you, we have listened to this stuff since I've listened to it since I've been in NASCAR. Kenny Schrader made the best quote on this years ago, man, when we were racing. It was this thing called, he got the call. He got the call, right? That means at Daytona or Talladega, you got NASCAR give you a little bit bigger spacer plate so you could win. So he got the call, right? And Schrader, or other things with rules. And Schrader put the comment in and said, listen, man, he said, I've got 3 phone numbers. He said, I gave them to Bill France. I give them to Mike Hilton. I give them to Gary. I gave everybody my phone numbers, and I never got a call. I never got the call, right? And just making a joke about it, just talking about, it's really silly for that to even be thought that could go on. If this manipulation stuff with NASCAR, if it was true, Dale Earnhardt Jr. would be an 8-time champion right now, Charlie.
Yeah.
All right. Our most popular driver for years, years, years. And he was not. He didn't win a championship. And, that right there should be proof and point to everybody that NASCAR just doesn't do this. They just don't do it. I've never seen, especially in the modern era. Let's talk about the modern era. I've never seen anything like that with proof that they've done that. It's just the way this shit plays out. I was sitting in the truck in Atlanta with NASCAR hierarchy, right? And I forget what we were talking about. It was some rule or somebody was getting penalized or something, and the guys were agonized. There's a couple of them talking about, and they were agonizing a lot over, well, you're going to do this rule that now we're going to be pulling for so-and-so, right? And it's like they were agonizing over knowing they know what the ramifications is going to be when they make a ruling, right? And they're agonizing over it. Like, we know what's coming by doing this. They're going to accuse us of this or favoritism or whatever. But, we got to stick to our guns and just, the way it is.
Yeah, Robert McElroy quotes Mark Martin from Twitter last night. We have a shit show here. Yeah. That's from Mark the Kid Martin.
Yeah.
Bill Goodwin says the 1, so Chastain, the 3, Austin Dillon, and the 23, Bubba Wallace, are all guilty of race manipulation. I agree. And that's where it's also,
I agree.
Look, they were caught red-handed because it's on the radio communications. Now, I'm sure everybody heard this because, again, NBC had 27 minutes. They played all this.
Yeah.
You heard, Bubba got the info, and then he said something about he had a bad tire.
He had a tire going down.
Which didn't seem true, and clearly NASCAR can check to see if that's true. Now, I have this article from Auto Week, just because we can't play the audio right here, but here's Austin Dillon's radio communications. This is some quotes from Auto Week. Dillon says, quote, does he know the deal? His team member, I'm trying to find him to tell him. Does the 1, Chastain, crew chief, know the deal? Another team member, yeah, he should. Here's Chastain's radio communications. Nice and smart with the 24. Of course, Byron. 24 is 1 to the good. 1 point to the good. They're even. The 6, Keselowski, is lined up to the 3. So, I mean, right there, it's obvious. They're saying, look, because Keselowski's obviously a Ford, they're saying, you got help, Austin Dillon, Ross Chastain, you can set up the blockade. Brad Keselowski's probably not going to play ball, but if you block him out, all of a sudden you set up the convoy for Willie B to win. So it's like, I mean, you're caught red-handed. Everybody heard this audio.
Yeah. Bill Goodwin, you're right, buddy. You're right. The 1, the 3, and the 23 are guilty of race manipulation. What we got to figure out what the rule is on race manipulation, because we'll know by election day or Tuesday or whoever the president is by Wednesday. Same time we find all that stuff out about the national election, we should find out what this manipulation rule means, because I don't know. I don't know what it is. I mean, there's definitely, I'm watching that. And again, Charlie, I'm sitting here thinking, as we talked about before, we're 20-some minutes waiting for the decision to come down from NASCAR. In my mind, there's no decision on the guy riding the wall. That should be a 3-second, answer. Yeah, he can't do that. And I'm thinking, all right, they're thinking about all this other stuff. They said they didn't. Elton Sawyer said, no, we weren't talking about that. So that stuff's going to be talked about. Again, where do you draw the line on the manipulation? I mean, it's all obvious to us, right? And fans and you and me and everybody, what we watched yesterday. Yep, they manipulated. There's no doubt about it. So what does NASCAR do about it? Hell, I don't know. As it turned out, right? If they would have if the 24, if those cars would went by the 24, he wouldn't be in it, right, Charlie? No. If the 23 had to let the 20 by, would he have been in it? I'm not sure how the points works right there, but I mean, both sides are manipulating for both teams.
Yeah. I'm still trying to find this race manipulation rule. So everybody bear with me here while I try to, because I want to find the exact language. But
Yeah.
just because we have the 4 here, we have the 4 drivers in. What do you think about this? I know we're not supposed to call it the Final 4,
Yeah.
but look, I understand it's the playoffs. The playoffs in any sport, it's not always fair to the best teams, drivers, whatever you want to say in the regular season. We've seen what the Patriots went undefeated in the regular season in football. They lost to the Giants.
Yeah.
I just feel like, and I said this last night, we did a live stream with Kenny Wallace, and it just feels wrong to me in 2024. I'm not saying that it's unfair, but it just kind of feels wrong that Kyle Larson is not in the championship 4. I just feel like the whole season was about Kyle Larson winning stages and leading laps and winning 6 races, all the controversy about the double and all that. It just felt like the year of Kyle Larson. And for him to not even be able to compete for a championship, it leaves me wanting more.
Yeah. Charlie, there is no doubt that this championship thing, the chase, all this stuff, there's no doubt it brings excitement to our sport. We can't, even the old time purists like myself, we cannot deny that it brings excitement. It does, big time, big time. Hell, we wouldn't be talking about this today, right? But on the other side of it, it has its flaws. There's no doubt that it's got some flaws in it. Now, do we want to be a stick and ball sport with our playoff? If our playoff format, is that what we want? If that's what we want, then what we're doing right now is the way it is in stick and ball sports, right? Just because you won all the games all year doesn't mean you're going to get in the Final Four. Or you're going to get in the World Series. It doesn't work like that in stick and ball, and ours is the same way. Now, I will say this, Charlie. Here's the thing that struck me probably as much as anything did of everything I've read. Brad Keselowski. All right. Now, here's the deal. And if you go into the red truck every week, raising hell about something, it gets to where the red truck won't listen to you as a driver. If you go in there once every 2 years or once every 18 months, you got something on your mind, they're going to listen to you, right? It's the same way I feel like with Brad Keselowski in our sport. Brad, he'll talk some stuff every now and then, but you don't really hear a whole lot. Denny every week's on there, right? So Denny, and I love Denny and I love what he does, but it gets a little repetitive and just on and on and on. But when Brad came out last night and stated, this is the camel, or this is a straw, baby, that broke the camel's neck. The last straw in the camel's back for the playoffs. That's what he said.
Yep. So basically, I'll read it real quick.
Right.
Auto Racing Analytics say this is a disaster. The key partner system is really the culprit of all of it. How do we get it back to everyone racing for themselves? Brad Keselowski quote tweets that and says, Rick, like you said, this should be the last straw on the camel's back for the playoffs.
Yeah. That carries, to me, to Rick Mast, and it should to NASCAR and the fans, that should carry a lot of weight. Because, Brad's one of those guys, man, when he speaks, right, he doesn't speak a lot about this stuff, but when he does, you've got to pay attention to it. Brad's he's very intellectual dude, right? He's very analytical with all his decisions and stuff he makes and the way he does his life. And when he comes up with a statement like that, that's what it struck me, dude. That's what it struck me. So what do we do? I don't know. Do we go with 10 races left? All right, the top 10 guys are the points. We're going to run a 10 race season for the 10 guys, right? That would, to me, get rid of some of the flaws we've got. Now, would that make it as exciting? You're not going to have the cutoff deals, or maybe you could not knock them out or something. But that's I don't know what the answer is to that. I do know this. I do know that it's been great for our sport, I think, to make it exciting. I also know that it's flawed. It has its flaws. And we're not talking about going back to the old format. I don't need that. We can't go back to the old format. It's just like the Gen 6 car. People fussing about that. We're not getting rid of this car. Okay. Everybody needs to quit fussing about this car. We're not going to get rid of this car. We're going to keep this car. We're going to keep improving it, right? And it's the same way with the championship deal. We're going to have this. We're going to have this type of championship, some form or another. I don't know what the hell it ended up being, right? But with Brad making that statement and the controversy and the position that it puts NASCAR in all the time, NASCAR don't want to be in this stuff, right? They just want to be it. They don't want to be in this stuff, but they are. So, I don't want to be. It's going to be interesting this week to see if anything comes down or if not, and then what goes on during the winter talking about all this stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm not even complaining as I'm discussing this. I think it's super interesting. I think now people might disagree with me. I think it's great for the sport in the sense that I think NASCAR is a sport where any publicity is good publicity because it's not the NFL, right? It's not where you can just roll out the footballs and everybody's going to watch. I do think whether it's positive or negative, I know people disagree with me because I got a bunch of comments when I said this last night, but I think people talking about the sport is always good for NASCAR. And this is not a perfect playoff system, although I think it drums up a ton of interest. I just think you can make little tweaks, right? Each year you can see what happens. You can try to make it more fair. And I put this comment up from Sammy Carroll because I thought about this when Brad Keselowski made his comment. Now, I don't think you should always govern your sport based on gambling at all, but like let's acknowledge how big gambling is in sports. Sammy Carroll says, what if you had money on Brad K for a top 5? You got screwed. There's all these ways that you can gamble on NASCAR. You can bet, hey, Brad Keselowski, I'm going to bet he gets a top 10. I'm going to bet he gets a top 5. Well, if you put $50 or $100 on Brad K getting a top 5, you're feeling like you got screwed.
Yeah.
Because there was a very good chance Brad Keselowski could have passed Chastain, Dillon, and William Byron and got a top 5. And by the way, Tony Stewart talked about this on the Kenny Conversation over a year ago. He said NASCAR, and you know this, he said NASCAR used to govern the garage. If you said something NASCAR didn't like, the next week they're going to give you a pit road speeding penalty, right? He said NASCAR can't do that anymore because of the gambling. And it's just part of the equation, but I do think we should think about the gambling because people are putting money on these things and you don't want people to feel cheated. And again, if you put money on Brad K top 5, you're walking away last night feeling cheated.
It's a new world. It's a new world we're in, Charlie. NASCAR's in a new world right now. It's a world that's different. The whole world's in a new world, right? But it's social media and all this, the electronics and communications and everything we can do, everything's instant in their world. Everything's instant with NASCAR. Everything's going on right now with NASCAR. The betting thing, all the tangents, right? I hadn't even thought about. I remembered that when you said that, but I had completely forgot about Tony making that comment, right? And he's exactly right. And Sammy Carroll's exactly right, right? I'm mad today because I'm out $100 or $500 because of that. I don't know I don't know. We're just in a different world right now.
And here's though, this was a super thanks. So thank you, Matthew Brown. Okay. People can actually tip us. They love our content so much they give us tips. Rick Mast, how about that? But here's Stephen Nevin on the other side. This is, and it is funny. I got $200 on Byron winning the championship, so I'm happy. LOL. That's the thing with gambling. Half the people are pissed, but the other half are always happy with the outcome because somebody's always betting either side of it.
And to your point a while ago, Bill France Jr., Bill France Sr. really be loving this. That was Bill France Sr.'s deal, man. Mm-hmm. I don't care about publicity as long as I get it. I don't care if it's good or bad, but give me publicity, right? And that was a different era. I mean, that's when nobody knew about our sport, but it was kind of the same concept. And Bill France Jr. the same way. He did what he did in 1979 or 8 CBS flag first time coverage of Daytona 500. That was his big deal. Get it out there, and it worked. And but in today's age, we go into the negativity of every little thing that goes wrong. But what I've noticed, and Charlie, I've noticed that some of these guys, some of the negativity, and I've been keeping up with it a little bit. I've noticed now for a while, I'll see the same names pop up, just negative for the last 4 or 5 years, talking about our sport. Every time something happens, they're the first to jump on there and talk about NASCAR's going to hell, it's going away, they're not being here no more, I don't watch it anymore, and on and on and on. There is a certain percentage of people that continue to do that, right? And they're still out here every day talking about the sport and still watching it because they say they're going to quit watching it and they're done with it. But you look up 6 months later and they're the same person is commenting again with the same gripe. But hell, they're still watching. They're still watching it. So I don't know what kind of percentage we're talking about with that. I don't know.
Yeah, we've talked about this for 35 minutes, and I think we could go on. Honestly, it's really interesting, and I think that people are interested. We got almost 500 people watching right now live, so thank you, y'all. We already have almost 2,400 people that have been watching for the last 35 minutes or so. But how about it's kind of like other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? But what do you think about? I mean, the race, Ryan Blaney. These Penske cars are big race drivers. You got 2 Penske cars in. Ryan Blaney just picked apart the field. He passes Chase Elliott at the end. And here's a guy I think in the last 2 years, it's an obvious statement because he won the championship last year. But Ryan Blaney, I think, in a lot of people's minds, went from like a pretty good, pretty decent driver to like a big dog. I mean, he's now back-to-back Final Fours, reigning champ. Has a chance to win again. This guy is he's elevating his status each and every week.
He's the man, dude. You ask, other people asked earlier about who's your prediction? Who's your prediction? And I've told you all along, my deal's about the Martinsville race. That was an exciting race for me. When you get to Phoenix, it's just one race, whoever hits the setup that day. And I've said this before, if the Penske's out there, they're going to win the championship. Now, let me talk about my prediction. Excuse me. You got 2 Penske cars, right? You got Reddick, right? And you got a Chevrolet. All right. Here's the way I look at this thing next week. Here's my prediction. And it's not based off Martinsville, maybe just a little bit of Martinsville, but I look at the last couple of years at Phoenix, right? For whatever reason, the 12 car and the 22, they've had a very, very good setup for that racetrack with this Gen 6 car, right? And year before was more dominant than last year. Last year, he won the championship. But here's the caveat. Here's the kicker, Charlie. 2 kickers to this. Number one, the 45 car ran good there the spring, I think it was. Like they had a pretty good setup, but they did pretty well. So maybe could pick up on that. I don't know, and have something work for him. But here's the big kicker for me. The 1 car outran the 12 last year at Phoenix in the championship race. The 1 car was faster than the 12. The 1 car won the race. He had a little better setup going for him. Now, this sets up the question, Charlie. Talk about manipulation. Does the 1 car share with Hendrick, the 24 car, what they did last year at Phoenix to outrun the 12? If they do, and it's all that still holds, if we're still on the same tire, because see, tires change setups too. If you go with a different tire to a racetrack, that changes a lot. With this Gen 6 car, if you're keeping the same tire from track to track or whatever, then things don't change like they used to with the setups. It'll be, more the same. So to me, the 45, by just running good there in the spring, okay, he's got a shot, but I don't see that happening right now. It's going to be one of the Blaney cars. I mean, it's going to be one of the Penske cars to me, and probably it could be Logano or Blaney. Flip a coin. Who knows with either one of those two? But they'll go back with the setup they had last year, and maybe tweaked a little bit. Remember this: the 1 car outrun the 12, so he was beating him somewhere. There are notes that have been written down by the crew chief saying this is where the 1 car beat us. Here's what we're going to try to make up that deficit or that area, right? So maybe they'd be a little bit better or the same. But again, the interesting part to me is, does the 1 car share with the 24 what to do to their car to outrun those Penske cars? And I guarantee you, OEM, the manufacturers, are already talking about that. Chevrolet is already on top of that stuff, dude. They're all over that stuff. So I know they will. So now, if they do that, then where we at? Who's going to win? Hell, I don't know. But I'm going to go with one of the Team Penske cars.
You got a 50% chance. See, it's funny too, because when you bring that up, you bring up the fact that Chastain's team would, probably should share the setup with the fellow Chevy, with Hendrick, with Byron. And then I think, we're talking obviously about race manipulation. For whatever reason, I just don't look at that as being as bad or as egregious as what happened last night.
Right.
I would almost assume that always happens with the manufacturers, that's gonna happen. To me, that's kind of like, we had this discussion a while back when there was the scandal of somebody sharing setup info for money. And you said, well, back in the day, you just get the guy drunk at the bar, right? And get him talking.
Right.
To me, that's a little more old school NASCAR. That's kind of like the way NASCAR has always been. But what happened on the track last night, because it was so obvious and because we had the radio communications, right? Like, I think most people with NASCAR, they kind of like the fact that NASCAR was built on illegal cars running moonshine, right? There's always a little bit of that, like, just kind of working the rules here and there, get your edge, get your advantage. But when it's so egregious, like yesterday, last night, that's different to me. That feels worse than what you described of the one car sharing info with the 24.
Yeah, it is. There's no doubt about that. And and the other part, the big part of that, Charlie, is it's out there for everybody to see, right?
Yeah, and here,
and what I just talked about with OEMs changing or sharing, or the manufacturers sharing information, that's not out there for us to know about or to hear or to see. But what we can see, boy, everybody jumps on it and raises hell about it. So, I don't know.
And
gosh, I love it.
It's so funny. To me, too, it's all about your degree, right? It's like in the court of law. I mean, you have murder, you have first degree, second degree, third degree, you have manslaughter, right? Like Seabell, and that's a bad analogy. I shouldn't compare these things to those things, but Seabell, he hung on the wall a little too long. And the same deal with the blocking. If they'd blocked for 2 laps, Rick, 2 laps doesn't look as bad. It felt like freaking 15 laps, right? And then it's like, come on now. So there's a matter of degree with all of this. And last night it was just very obvious.
And I think, that's what triggered Brad Keselowski. That's what made him make that statement. He got out of that race car, man, madder than a wet hen. He was mad because he was jammed up behind these 2 dudes, right? He couldn't go anywhere, and there's a guy beside him. He couldn't do anything other than wrecking the guy in front of him. It would have been the 3 car, I guess, is the one that he had to wreck. And he was jammed up there for 15 laps, not being able to move, not being able to do a damn thing, can't pass anybody, right? Because these goofballs, these 2 guys were sitting there riding side by side, holding the line up. So with the drop of checkered flag, now he's madder than hell, right? And he gets out of the car, and what he's truly thinking about the playoff system is what comes out, And I think that's what triggered it with him. But I was glad and happy that he did it, because I'm like, to me, that's a big statement. That really means something. So,
and Tyler Burbeck writes, Bell and Joe Gibbs can't challenge it because NASCAR deemed Bell as a safety violation. Right. Elton Sawyer did say that last night. It's not an appealable offense. He basically said it's similar to if a guy goes over the wall too quickly or a loose tire. It's not something the teams can appeal.
Right. Yeah. Any safety violations, in fact, in my dumb self, I already knew that, right? I knew that. Safety violations are not appealable. They're not appealable. Okay. Go back on it. So, and then did you see the dejection of the coach? Man, they showed the coach walking down pit road from the red truck going back to his hauler. Golly, you talk about dejection. I'm watching him, and the porter's trying to talk to him, and he just walked along doing his thing. And I'm like, damn, coach is dejected, right? You hate that for the coach. I mean, I really felt bad for him at the moment, but golly, the problem with racing, man, it can't be but so many winners. And that's the problem, and it was this close to that being Rick Hendrick walking down through there with that, right?
Yeah.
Or you could look up, if you'd have found Chase Elliott, you'd have found him walking down through there with that. There's so many of those stories like that, right? that there's so much dejection at these racetracks when these races are over a lot of times, and the fans don't see it because everybody gets out the car or whatever, they're going home, right? And their guts just wrenched. We just missed the playoffs. We just missed the championship run. We just missed a chance of winning this race. You don't see those motions very often played out because they're just, the TV's interviewing the guys that won and everything's just happy. But the fans believe me, fans, y'all got a little glimpse. When you watch Coach Gibbs walking down pit road, you got a small glimpse of so many of the competitors after every one of these races. That's their attitude. But you don't see it, right? You don't know that it goes on. I know it because I did it many years and I watched other people do it. And it's not a good thing, but that's part of the competitiveness of our sport and the drive. And man, if something like that happens and you're just happy, everything's fine, yeah, you don't need to be this sport. But anyhow.
Yeah, and I know this gets back to race manipulation. You can't manipulate this, but I do think the sport is usually better if that Final Four, if each year you have a Hendrick car, a Gibbs car, a Penske car, and maybe one other one. Now, again, the storylines with 23XI Racing, because they're suing NASCAR, and you can just imagine a situation where NASCAR has to present, if it's Steve Phelps, has to present the trophy to Tyler Reddick in 23XI as they're suing. And again, I'm going for storylines. It does seem, again, unfair is not the right word because all's fair in love and war, and these are all sports. It's these little battles. It's almost like war. I'm not trying to compare it to people losing their lives in war, but yeah, Kyle Larson's not in. A Joe Gibbs car is not in. I will say this though. You mentioned Joe Gibbs being dejected. It was pretty obvious. You have kids, Rick. I have a couple young kids. When you catch your kid, the old saying, you catch your kid with their hand in the candy jar, whatever it is, like when your kid did something wrong and you call them on it and you look at their face and they're guilty as hell. That's how Christopher Bell looked.
He did
when he was being interviewed. He was not cheering. He was basically praying. He was praying, please uphold this because I know I kind of broke the rule, but let it slide.
Yeah, I think I would have handled that differently if I'd have been him. Right? He was sitting there just like a whip up, caught child. You're exactly right. Charlie, I'm proud of you. There's a very good analogy. That was very good of you. Very astute on your part, man.
Thank you.
Pick up on that. But you're exactly right. I believe I'd have been jumping up, down, and fussing and raised. I think I would have, even if I'd have known I'd done screwed up, I'd have been pleading my case. Listen, yeah, there's a rule to getting in the wall, but I want to hit the wall and I got off of it. And they can't do this, and they can't do this. No, I'm in the championship. No, they can't take it away from me. Just really played it up. He didn't do it that way. He just looked like a kid that got caught with his hand in the candy jar, like you say. So I don't know.
All right. I think you said one of the Penske cars is going to win. Let's just, so we have it here for everyone to say, hey, we were right or we were wrong. I'll give my prediction first.
Okay.
I think I agree with you. And I'm going to go, I actually want, first of all, I'll tell people, I want Tyler Reddick to win. Because I think it would be.
See, you're a shit stirrer. You're a shit stirrer, Charlie.
No, I am. No, I admit it. I 100% admit. I think that's the best story if Tyler Reddick wins.
Oh, without a doubt.
But if I had to put money on it, I'm going to bet Blaney. What about you?
Yeah, that's the one I'd put on. That's it. That you just, and not because right now, just because of the past couple of years there, and a little bit right now because. Some of the stuff that works at Martinsville, it's a short track car, has to turn. You got to be able to put the throttle down hard. Same thing at Phoenix. I mean, same thing out there. The car has to do some of the same characteristics. So, maybe that stuff passes over because, dude, I mean, the last part of that race, he was class of the field. I thought the 9 car was the best car, right? But no, he wasn't the best car. Once the track got greased up or rubbered up a little bit, 12 car was the car to beat. And, so you carry that over a little bit. Momentum is momentum. That's bull crap. It's about what's in your car, what your chassis is, what you're doing with your setup, your aerodynamics, geometry, how you making your car work. Turn in the middle, put the gas down hard, get off the corner. That's what it's all about. and they've had the best setup there for a couple of years at Phoenix. They're still on it at Martinsville. I think it carries over to Phoenix. And Charlie, can we go down fantasy lane for just maybe 30 seconds? The 45 car wins the championship. We go to the awards banquet, right? How much fodder? How much could the scribes, our reporters in our sport, could they be in a bigger heaven, right? Could I mean the people that cover our sport, and they just couldn't be in a bigger heaven if the 45 wins the championship and we go to the awards banquet with the suit going on against NASCAR. I don't know. And then stepping up there as NASCAR have to give the award to those guys, and they're fine. They want those guys in our sport. I shouldn't say that. They would be happy for them from that standpoint, because you got to separate, in any business, you separate things, right? Separate personal from business and all that. But golly bum, oh Lord, I think I would become a reporter for 1 week if that went on. And I don't even know how to write, but I could talk.
But you're a reporter. I mean,
well,
you're reporting right now.
Well, I guess I am. But golly bum, that would be so much fun. But I really don't think that's going to happen. Now, stranger things have happened, but the Toyotas as a group, I like yesterday as a group, the Toyotas had just, it wasn't there. They whatever setup they were using, whatever's going on, it wasn't there. Like, again, some of the stuff they use at Martinsville carries over to Phoenix. So, a lot of reasons I don't have the 45 top of the list. I have the 22. I got the 12, 22, and the 24 in that order. That's the way I've got it figured right now.
All right. Well, in terms of story time, we're gonna have 3 months to tell stories in the off season.
Yeah.
In terms of what's pissing off Rick Mast, if there's something, and also, I mean, this election tomorrow, I'm sure we're gonna have a lot to talk about next week, not just the NASCAR championship. So maybe, I mean, you tell me, but maybe we can also end on a positive note, because Dodgers win the World Series. Your guy, Freddie Freeman, just goes off and wins the MVP. I wanted more games. I wanted that game to go back to LA for a game 6, but man, the Yankees just kicked the hell out of the ball in that inning and allowed 5 runs.
Yeah. Freddie, man, Freddie's our man, right? Freddie was our man in Atlanta. They bought Freddie. Freddie, we couldn't afford him. Although I'm going to bring this up, Charlie. The Atlanta Braves made an offer, right? Mm-hmm. Freddie's agent did not tell him about that latest offer at the 12th hour or whatever you call it. And he signed with the Dodgers. After that, it came out that Freddie didn't know about that offer. So he in turn fires his manager. So, when you look at it like that, we could have kept Freddie. But I'm happy that he went there and he did what he did. He's doing what he's doing. I'm happy for that guy. I wish it had been with the Braves, but you take somebody like Freddie, dude, just such a good dude, man. He's just, I mean, he's one of those athletes like, dude, you cannot not pull for, you can't not pull for this guy, right? His values, his family deal, the way and you know what, Charlie? It's like racing. It's like competitors walking through the garage area. It's like what your competitors, the way they feel about you, that's a pretty good sign of what kind of person you are. And you'll not find anybody in MLB, if I understand it, that has one bad word to say about Freddie Freeman, right? Unlike Carson Hocevar, in the Cup garage right now, and they brought that up on TV yesterday. So that guy's got some work to do, by the way. But anyhow, real happy for Freddie.
It is funny how Hocevar kind of flew under the radar for about half the season. And then the last several weeks, we're talking about him a lot more, and not for good reasons.
Yeah. And that's the deal. What they were talking about on TV. Charlie, I've seen this so many times with drivers. You'll have talented drivers, very good talented drivers, and they come up and they're making their way through and they're causing problems. Ross Chastain being a prime example. They're causing problems. They're wrecking. All right. At some point, he has to rein it back. If he's going to make it in the top league, if he's going to make it in Cup racing, I'm talking about the steps getting up there and getting into Cup. If you're going to make it, you can't be wrecking people all the time. You just can't do it. So what you have to do as a driver is you have to rein back from wrecking people. And I had to talk with Ty Norris about this, about his driver at the time, Ross Chastain. And I've seen this. It's probably, I don't know the percentage, but I'm going to say 8 out of 10 times, Charlie, when that driver reins back to stop wrecking, he loses his edge.
Yeah.
And that edge is so fine. It's finer than the hair on a frog's ass, man. That's a very fine edge. When you take that away from that driver, he loses that edge. He's not competitive anymore, or he doesn't have the same deal. Now, about 2 out of 10 will keep it. Ross Chastain's one of those guys. He brought it back, and he's still very, very competitive. I'm going to tell you somebody else was like that, and you don't realize it. Somebody else it fit that bill, and that's Jimmy Johnson.
Okay.
Jimmy Johnson was like it when he first started, and his biggest deal was Daytona Talladega. He could not run one of those races without causing a friggin' wreck, right? I mean, it was a couple or 3 years. Jimmy was doing good on other racetracks, bringing it back, not really getting in trouble. But you go to Talladega, Daytona, and he was just his deal of what he wanted to do and make it happen. It wasn't working. He was wrecking every time he turned around. And there was talks about it that he'd been talked to, and they talked about it. Jimmy pulled it back at Talladega, Daytona, did not lose his edge. He didn't lose that frog's hair his ass size edge, right? And so anyhow, that's where Carson is right now. That's where we're going to figure out next year, right? Because you can't keep doing what he's doing. You just can't keep running over people. Like Harvick, when Ross Chastain was getting all this advice from everybody, he said one of the best he got was from Harvick. Harvick just walked up to him and says, "Quit wrecking shit," and walked away. Chastain's like, okay, it's that simple. Just quit wrecking shit, right? Excuse me. So anyhow,
I love it. I think I saw the other day what your daughter Katie said. You have the Rictionary, and I think I'm going to tease. I'm going to tease this show. I wrote it down. 2 great old school country sayings. One was "madder than a wet hen," and then you said something about a hair on a frog's ass. So I'm gonna put that together to tease this podcast. How about that?
That'd be great.
All right,
be great, Charlie.
Rick, great fun as always. Can't wait to do it next week as we're breaking down. We won't really break down the election. Maybe we'll give our thoughts a little bit, but mostly the championship and everything else going on. And then we'll pivot to the off season. But thank you everybody for watching. Please hit that like. Hit that subscribe if you haven't. I mean, Rick, we had like 500 people watching live at one point. We already have 3,600 people watching this. So good show. People are into it. And we'll see you next week, buddy.
Thank you, folks. Y'all tune in. See you, Charlie. Bye, everybody.
See ya. End stream.
Cool.